Hello fellow Rick fans, this is Wayne from rwcc.com here for a little trip down memory lane. For those of you who saw recently on Instagram and Facebook, we posted a little map which was a teaser for something which I'm hopefully going to get recorded today, which is a trip down memory lane. This was meant to happen last year. It didn't happen last year, it's happening this year. Last year was the 20th anniversary of the release of Return to the Centre of the Earth, which, as everybody knows, was the sequel to Rick's original Journey to the Centre of the Earth. And if you look on the back wall there, there's a whole bunch of all the different release formats of Journey to the Centre of the Earth. But Return to the Centre of the Earth was released in 1999, as I'm sure you all know. Great album, loved it. But what we also did to promote the album was in a little bit later, just sort of towards 2000, which really does make it 20 years ago now. We had a website that we put online to promote the album, and it was a website that was kind of ahead of its time. It was a multimedia website made with Shockwave and Flash. And when you think back to the year 2000, that was really very, very early on in the sort of evolution of the internet. Very few things were happening on the web that was sort of as revolutionary as Shockwave was at the time. But the website itself, rwcc.com, has been online since 1996, so that did predate it a little bit. But we wanted a way, or at least Rick wanted a way, to basically promote this. There is the album, Return to the Centre of the Earth, with all the beautiful Roger Dean artwork obviously on the cover and on the inside, as you can see. Came in a wide variety of formats, of course on CD. CD was very prevalent then. Here's another rare format for it. There is the mini disc version of Return to the Centre of the Earth. For those of you who remember what mini discs were, there it is there. I don't think I've even got a mini disc player anymore, so I can't even play it, but there it is there. And actually, if you can see very, very carefully, there it's actually signed by Rick as well. So there we go. Nice bit of memorabilia for those who like mini discs. So this website, as I said, a Shockwave website, was an attempt to allow people to hear samples from the album, to see some visuals. It was a journey to the centre of the Earth through an interactive website. And as I said, it was written a long time ago, 1999 into the year 2000. I thought it would be fun to try and resurrect it and get it up and running again, and to sort of run you through what it was, because it's not online anymore. It couldn't be online. When it was online, it even had its own URL. It was returntocenter.com, so it even had its own individual website. It was separate from rwcc.com. So what we're going to try and do for a bit of fun is to play through the entire site from start to finish, hopefully, if it still works from end to end. And what I'll do is on the way, I'll sort of talk you through some little bits about it. And for those, I do know some people played it. And the reason I know some people played it is because the actual website had a competition as part of it. So the competition, you had to find things on the way. You'll see that in a little while. And the winner of the competition, and we had around, I remember it was close to 2,000 entries to the competition, which absolutely amazed all of us. And you know, we put all the names into a hat. Rick picked a winner, and what they actually won was, like you can see on the back wall here, these 4 prints along the back here, there and there. These are what are called the short scores for Return to the Centre of the Earth. It was Rick's sort of jottings and notes that he made while he was recording the album. So they were actually sort of released in beautiful frames. They're actually in wooden frames originally, but I transferred them into black frames for my office wall here. And the winner won a set of those, which were, you know, it was a really lovely thing to have. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the winner. So if you're watching this and you were the person who won those short scores, please get in touch through the website or Facebook or Instagram, whatever. We'd love to be able to mention your name. But as I said, here goes. Let's see how it goes, and we'll try to take you from start to finish through returntocenter.com. Okay, so that's a picture some of you will be familiar with. To actually make this run at all, I had to spin up a virtual computer, or a VM, as those in the industry will know it's referred to, and install Windows XP Service Pack 3. That was the only way I could actually make this run from start to finish. But here we go. Let's open up a browser. Now, when I say a browser, this isn't online, so don't all go rushing to the internet to try and find it. It doesn't exist online. This is all running through a local web host within this machine here. So this was the first thing that people actually got to see. As you can see, this first bit here was actually done in Flash, and it contained 3 sections. A briefing about what was going to be happening. You could leap straight into the journey itself if you had been here before. And then there was a little bit of sort of a background as to how the actual website was built that talked about all the technologies that we used at the time. And I'll just go into that first of all because it's actually quite interesting. It reminded me a lot about all the different things we used to build it. For all of these screens that are sort of, you know, quite detailed, I'm not going to sort of sit around and read them all word for word. You can just pause the video on YouTube and read them if you're really interested. But this talks about Bryce, which was used for a lot of the graphics, and then we used a lot of all the Macromedia software, Director, Flash. Some of the footage came directly from EMI Classic, from the electronic press kit, but we actually filmed Rick doing quite a lot of the things in the video that you're going to see. And it was all done with QuickTime at the time, QuickTime being the prevalent video format at the time. So as I said, if you want to, you can pause on these and have a look and read through them. And there, once again, is all the different people that were involved in this. Thank you to all of them. All right, so the briefing, which was just really a way of actually sort of telling people how to sort of get to the get through the site. I won't bother going through that because you're actually going to see this. So let's just jump straight ahead to the beginning of the adventure itself. Okay, so let's dive straight in. So here we're at a door, and you can see what the general interface looks like on the screen. Every time there's something to do in this interactive experience, the cursor changes. You will notice a little bit of flashing on the cursor. That's unfortunately an artifact of the virtual machine I'm running this in. There's not a lot I can do about it, unfortunately. But anyway, let's go in through the door and see what happens.
Hi there, and welcome to the Return website. You're about to embark on a return journey to the center of the Earth. You're with me here now in the planning room, and in this room you can collect all of the things that are going to help you along your way and in the competition. There are 6 interactive items in this room, 4 of which you can transfer to your PDA and take with you on your journey. Just to help you out is a PDA on the table. So grab it and I'll speak to you again very shortly.
So a PDA, that's the first clue as to the vintage of this piece of Shockwave. We had PDAs back then in the year 2000 or 1999, whatever it was, and they of course no longer exist. I think I had a Newton, I had a sign organizer amongst other things, but obviously it's the thing we refer to as our cell phone now, I guess. So Rick said there were 6 interactive items, including this PDA, so let's have a little look around the room. So we can swing all the way around. There's the door that we just came in through, and on the wall there are a couple of devices that inviting us to go and look further. Let's go back here, and so here we have that. Oh, there's the album cover. So album cover is some details of Roger Dean. So a lot of the screens within this piece have lots of reading material in them. I'm not going to read it all out verbatim because it's going to get far too long otherwise, but if you're interested in reading any of these, just pause the video on YouTube and read them, and I'll skip over them fairly swiftly just for the sake of time. Let's have a little look at these 2 videos. So this is the original oil painting from Roger Dean that was on display at the press launch at the Natural History Museum in London. A little clip of that, and if we go and have a look at the other one. Mr. Wakeman himself in his leather trench coat, making a triumphant exit, or rather entrance I should say, from the globe, again in the Natural History Museum in London. So that's a look at those. Let's go and have a look for this PDA on the table. Oh, well, there's the table obviously, so let's click on the PDA, see what happens. Ah, so there it is, there's the PDA, and again I guess that's what PDAs look like. I'm guessing that was a speaker on the left hand side with some coloured lights and buttons on the side. Ah, so we've successfully activated it, it seems, and you can see it's now nestling in its little hiding place at the top of our console. What else have we got on the table? Ah, so for those of you who were looking on Instagram and Facebook the other day, that's the map that we posted to give a little clue as to what we're doing there. That's the map that you can use to find your way around this game. You could drop into different parts of it if you wanted to, if you just want to go back and revisit something. So let's scan that map into the PDA so we can take it with us. We've now got a red light to say that one of the things has been done. And this is a interesting piece of manuscript, Arne Saknussem's manuscript. Let's get that in there. So that's two things. We've got two lights on now, the red and green. Let's see what else we can find on the bookshelf. Competition rules. We've now got a yellow light. And last of all, Professor Lindenbrook's
Well
journal.
done! You're now ready to start on your journey. And don't forget to keep your eye open for these logos along the way. There's also lots to do and lots to listen to. It's a bit scary, so I'll be popping up every now and then to see how you're getting on. Good luck.
Oh, so the little logos Rick was referring to there, the album covers, they were the competition pieces. So if we go back and have a look in this PDA again, we've got, as we've already seen, we've got the map there. We have that manuscript that we saw a second ago. Competition details, so there was a competition running. We were basically looking for these album covers all the way through the journey, and if you managed to find all of the album covers, you got entered into a competition. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then we have a journal, so there's a journal and different pages to read as we go through the adventure. As I said, I'm not going to spend too much longer. The screen size is of course fairly small, but you know, this would have actually been quite big on people's machines because you know, obviously people had smaller monitors in those days, so everything was of its time, as we've said. Okay, so we need to get somewhere now, so I think it probably might relate to the translation of the manuscript. So we are now ready to move on. Now what happened there pretty quickly, because you probably didn't even spot it, but we had some instructions in the top left of the screen, and the light in the corner went from red to amber to green. So basically what was going on there was we had to find ways back in the year 1999, 2000, we had to find ways to download all the pieces of this adventure, including the QuickTime, the audio, everything that's within it. We had to find ways to download it sequentially so people with dial-up modems could actually get all the pieces. So an awful lot of code that's within this game, or Lingo as it was called. Lingo is the programming language of Macromedia Director it was created in. A lot of that code was simply to allow these pieces to download in the background quietly while you're actually playing the game, and basically the red light meant you can't go any further because it's not finished downloading. The amber light said you were almost ready to go, and green, you were ready to move on. So you'll see those things all the way through the game. They're going to flash up really quickly because of course it's all local on this virtual machine. It's not downloading from anywhere. So when you see the top part here flash between scenes, that would have taken or depending on the on how good a dial-up you had in those days, it could have taken a little while for that to happen. Anyway, we are now ready to move on.
On the 24th of May, 1863, Professor Lidenbrock and his nephew Axel discovered an old parchment within a 12th century volume entitled Heimskringla, itself a chronicle of the Norwegian princes who had ruled over Iceland. Written in runic manuscript by Arne Saknussemm, an alchemist of the 16th century, it translated: "Descend into the crater of Snæfellsjökull, over which the shadow of Scartaris falls, before the calends of July, bold traveler, and you will reach the center of the earth." 2 centuries forward from this discovery, 3 geologian explorers traversed land and sea before they reached the mass of volcanic tufa known as Iceland. Veiled in secrecy, their purpose: to emulate the journey that had been taken by their forefathers 200 years previous. For fear of being followed, their identities were known to no one. And for this reason, as they began their ascent through vast fields of ice toward the magnificent snowy nightcap of the Snæfellsnes volcano, their expectations became inexplicably intertwined with those of unease as they prepared to challenge timeless history. On reaching the tabletop summit, they slowly descended into the crater of Snæfellsjökull, and so began the return to the center of the Earth.
So that was, of course, Sir Patrick Stewart in the studio in Los Angeles recording his narration for the album. We've got lots of little clips from the actual recording of the album that were provided by EMI Classics as part of the electronic press kit. So, we included as many of those as possible. Again, fairly small clips of video for the reason I stated previously. And the other sort of point to this site, as I mentioned before, it was to give sort of teasers of what the album was like to people to encourage them to buy it. So we've included all the narration. So all the narration that's on the album is in the experience, and little snippets of music, including the background music that you can hear at the moment. So we were fortunate that the recording engineers provided us all these as separate clips. So most of which we got from the studio directly, which we were able to use, and a few bits that we actually sampled directly from the final CD itself. Anyway, let's move on to the next scene. Or you can check the PDA. So at any point here, as I said, normally this will be loading. So we were encouraging people to go and check the PDA to see if anything had changed or anything was different. And you can see the same journal entry in there at the moment, but as the game progressed, the journal changed, and of course, if you got some competition pieces, you could check and see how many pieces you'd actually got along the way. But let's move on. So there you just got a brief glimpse of what it looked like. And also in the corner here, there was a Pentium 3 logo. So perhaps I should just talk briefly about that before we move on. The website itself, returntocenter.com, was sponsored by and paid for by Intel. It was a project as part of a drive they were doing to promote the Pentium 3 processor that they just released at the time. And Rick had a good friend who worked for Intel, Jonathan Brearley. If any of you go to Rick's Facebook page, you can see Jonathan popping up, making comments every now and again. Hi Jonathan, if you're listening to this. And he very much sort of brokered the arrangement with Intel to sponsor this, so that's why there's a little Pentium 3 logo. It normally appears for longer because it drops down while the loading's happening, but as I've already explained, that all happens pretty quickly here, so you only see it flash into existence very, very briefly. Anyway, time to move on.
The base of the crater comprised 3 separate shafts which yawned beneath their feet. According to the original parchment of Arne Saknussemm, in the last days of the month of June, the shadow of Scartaris would fall upon the opening they were to enter. They knew from the documentation of Professor Lidenbrock that the central shaft was the one that he had taken. But to their astonishment, as the shadow fell, It cast itself over the westerly entrance. Nature had declared for them a different route.
Did you spot the shadow creeping over the westerly route there? So that's obviously the place you think we should go, but remember there's the competition, so we were actually encouraging people to explore all around the interface. So let's have a little look in this cave. Yeah, nowhere to go there. I'll also point out at this particular juncture that all of this scenery that you're seeing, the Icelandic stuff earlier, the caves you're seeing, this was all created in a 3D program called Bryce, version 4 of Bryce it was. And we had a very talented young man who created most of this artwork in Bryce by the name of Kevin Dobson. No idea where he is now, but if you happen to listen to this, Kevin, hi, and do pop over and say hello if ever you're around. He produced most of this artwork, which we then sort of worked into the interface that you're seeing. So thanks to Kevin, and as you're going to see, there was an awful lot of artwork that got created in Bryce, and it was basically a 3D rendering program for scenery. You could create worlds in it. For those of you familiar with that very old game Myst, all that kind of imagery that you saw in Myst, you know, that it was a program for creating stuff like that. Absolutely brilliant, and the stuff took quite a long while to render, but as part of the deal with Intel, we actually got given one of these Pentium 3 computers, which made the rendering times an awful lot quicker than they would have been otherwise. Anyway, let's have a look down this central shaft. Ah, what do we see here? An album cover. That's one we've captured. And now let's try down the way we're meant to go. Again. Ah, we can proceed down this way.
Following a gallery of lava which had created a natural descending staircase, their anticipation heightened at the realization that they had now embarked upon an entirely new journey. On reaching the end of the shaft, they entered a narrow tunnel, its calcareous rock walls dating back to the evolution of plant and animal life. Ever descending, they continued through arch after arch, gallery after gallery, their lights constantly reflecting off variegated white and red-veined marble, indelibly stamped with impressions of primitive life. As their descent continued, they discovered threads of copper and manganese, whilst displayed within the rock walls beautiful verdant tints, colored traces of platinum and gold. This, the buried treasure of Mother Earth. For what seemed an eternity, the labyrinth wove a sinuous and winding path, its spiral descent finally reaching an end as the gallery opened up to become a vast mineral forest, majestically illuminated by phosphorescent light. Stalagmites and stalactites served as prisms from which rainbow-colored beams flew in every direction, simultaneously lighting a pathway through this newly discovered subterranean mineralogical kingdom.
I wonder what will happen if you break the beams.
I wonder what will happen when you break the beams. Let's see if we can break them. Catch them. Oh, there was one. There was one. Well, it wins us another competition piece by the looks of it.
It led to an almost perfectly formed descending terrestrial staircase. After successfully negotiating the avenue of prismed light, they reached the staircase. Carefully, they began the slow descent into the ever-darkening chasm. As tiredness took hold, the weary travelers found shelter within a recess that nature had carved out of the rock wall as if awaiting their arrival. As they lay exhausted, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Slight at first, the tremors soon increased to terrifying proportions. Huge cracks appeared all around them, and fear replaced bewilderment. The earth cried out in pain as if its subterranean world was about to split into 1,000 fragments. The earthquake had begun.
stones look interesting. Why don't you take a closer look?
Yes, let's take a closer look at the stones. And let's also talk about the animation. So, as I mentioned, this is running in a virtual machine, but on a 2020 spec computer. And even running under emulation, the animations are running far quicker now than they ran originally. So those stones actually came down a lot more gracefully and slowly in the original. And I was going to sort of try and edit the files and put some slugs in to slow it down, but what the heck. Let's examine these stones and see what happens. Ah, I think that was another album cover we got there. So we can check that now because we're waiting to proceed to the next scene. Let's have a look inside. And yes, 1, 2, we've now got 3 of our competition pieces. And let's just check. Some new pages in the journal have opened up. Again, pause and read if you wish. And here's some information about Ozzy Osbourne, the singer of that last song there. Buried Alive, which was actually released as a single, as I'm sure most of you know. So that was one single that came from the Return to the Centre of the Earth album. Let's move on and see what comes next. So again, you get 2 chances to move on with these things. Remember, there was a move on to then move over to the next piece, and then another one to make sure you were ready to go. So that's why it appears to be 2 clicks in quick succession. It wouldn't have ordinarily been. And this torch-like view that you're currently seeing, this is me moving the mouse around to actually cause this. I'm pretty sure in the original the cursor was hidden. I can't be 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure the cursor was hidden, so it isn't for some reason, and I'm not going to go and try and fix it. So anyway, let's move on and see what happens.
Buried alive in their own private chamber beneath the fallen rocks, their source lights illuminated a fissure in the recessed wall which had opened just wide enough for them to pass through. Immediately they were faced with a network of caves, one of which appeared to exude minute traces of natural light.
Is it this one? No. Pitch black in there. Let's try this one. No. Pitch black there as well. It must be this one.
Selecting this route, they found themselves stepping through a walled gallery of hieroglyphic art, a seemingly never-ending pastiche of ancient man and his constant struggle for survival. They knew from Professor Lidenbrook's documentation that on his journey 200 years previously, he himself had encountered a giant herdsman in Earth's inner sanctum. As they strove to decipher the enigma that surrounded them, they realized that having already survived many thousands of years of almost static evolution within this magical kingdom beneath the Earth's crust, it was not inconceivable that this species of man still existed, and it was to his world they had come, uninvited and almost certainly unwelcome.
Can you read hieroglyphics? I think there could be more here than meets the eye.
More here than meets the eye. Do you think that could be a clue? I think it probably could. And did you notice the shadow of the menacing herdsman creep in there to scare us? I think Rick did say at the beginning it was scary, didn't he? I mean, I'm not quite sure that it's R-rated or 18 rated, but there we go. And look what I can see. Another album cover. That's 4 we've got now, I think, and we appear to have some things are lighting up. Now, if you know what the next track or song on the album is, you might be able to figure out where this is going. B looks like an O, 2 N's, an I and an E, T, Y, L, And of course you had to figure this out, but I know where they all are.
Is Anybody There is a love song, and the story runs parallel with that of the adventures in the centre of the earth. At first it starts off gently about a love lost and is very sentimental, but grows and grows as anger sets in and it becomes more powerful.
There, the lovely Bonnie Tyler. And so that was a clip, as I said, that came from the original electronic press kit on video. In fact, it was a Betamax video, as I seem to recall. Great performances. I wish I still had it. In fact, I might try and see if I can dig it out. It must be probably in my garage somewhere. Great performances recorded on there, including Bonnie, who really gave it everything in that performance. It really was great. If I can find it, I'll post it on YouTube as well. Let's just check the PDA before we move on. Let's just check. Yes, there's our 4th competition piece. And another little journal entry. Pause and read if you wish. And a little biography of dear old Bonnie Tyler. But let's move on.
The dim traces of natural light grew stronger as they continued their journey through the galleried cave. Suddenly, the eastern wall came to an abrupt end, opening out to display a huge ravine that stretched as far as the eye could see. Waterfalls poured from fissures in the rock face, whilst moss-covered walls danced with pinpoints of golden light as thousands of tiny fireflies awoke to this unexpected intrusion. The impression was that of gazing down upon a city at night, dancing beneath the stars. The dance of 1,000 lights.
And there, Mr. Wakeman himself playing at CTS Studios Wembley. And the little fireflies dancing in the ravine. Of course, a much-loved piece from the album, and Rick still plays it on his piano tours even today. In 2019, he was playing that as part of his repertoire on the piano tour, so a much-loved piece of music. Certainly one of my favourites from the album. Let's just check the PDA before we move on. I don't know if you spotted, I swooped in and picked up another album cover. That's 5 we've got now. And the journal entry on that journal entry was the same. But now we have a little dated, I guess, biography of Mr. Wakeman himself, written as it was in the year 1999-2000. Okay, time to move on.
With great care, they negotiated the pathway that circumvented the ravine. Finally, they descended onto a plateau rich in vegetation, where the earth had been constantly fed by abundant waterfalls. Huge palmacites, bound together by complicated masses of creeping vines, grew above carpets of graminiferous plant life. Deprived of the vivifying warmth of the sun, they were colorless and without perfume. Mesmerized by this wondrous sight, they somehow became oblivious to all sounds and movements emulating from within the forest. Suddenly, they were awakened from their inner dreams as the dense foliage walls spread open before them, and they found themselves confronted by a manifestation that surpassed all known human comprehension. In front of them stood prehistoric creatures of the Tertiary and Quaternary periods. A herd of gigantic mastodons. They in turn were marshaled by a human Proteus who stood over 12 feet high.
Mr. Slow. Well, I think everybody knows a Mr. Slow. You know, the sort of person that'll be late for his own funeral. Here he comes.
The giant shepherd turned and walked toward them in a slow and deliberate manner. Unarmed and with no place to hide, they remained transfixed as he came within 2 meters of where they stood. Without acknowledgement, he passed them by, his eyes motionless and staring directly ahead at all times. The shepherd had evolved in darkness, and without natural sunlight, had no need of sight. His world was without vision.
You know I've waited all my life, my friends, even though the story has no end. All my friends, they call me Mr. Slow. It's alright, it's alright.
Mr. Slow was without doubt my favourite song on the album, personally speaking. And again, let's have a little look in here. New journal entry and a little bit of a biography of the singer of Mr. Slow, Tony Mitchell. Let's move on.
Continuing their journey around the edges of the forest, they crossed a small natural rock bridge that led them behind the waterfall to the entrance of a small tunnel. At first, able only to proceed on their hands and knees in a lizard-like fashion, progress was slow. But as the downward slope became increasingly pronounced, more and more water poured from the fractures in the tunnel walls, making the cave floor damp and slippery. No longer able to affect their rate of descent, they found themselves rapidly gaining speed as they slid downwards at an alarming rate. Constant buffeting awaited their every twist and turn as they continually drifted in and out of consciousness. Hurtling out of control through a maze of underground water chutes, only the inner earth could confess to knowing their destiny.
Never is a Long, Long Time is a semi-nonsense song with lots of reverse statements all over the place. I suppose my favourite being Welcome to a Theme Without a Part, a Place Without a Home.
Again, that animation was a little more frenetic than it was originally, and it kind of interfered with the video a little bit, but you got the point, hurtling through. Another journal entry, and of course that was Trevor Rabin, who Rick's colleague from Yes, who sung that particular song. No video footage of that, because that was actually recorded in America. The only stuff that's in the electronic press kit was stuff that was recorded in the United Kingdom, of course. Let's move on to the next scene.
Eventually, they found themselves expelled with great force into a fast-flowing river. Exhausted, they clung to passing driftwood. As the waters slowly calmed, a stillness filled the air, and as they viewed all around them, they realized that they had been carried into a vast ocean, stretching as far as the eye could see to an achromatic horizon. Behind them and on each side were enormous cliffs and huge capes. The landscape lit with clear, dry whiteness in the nature of the aurora borealis, demonstrating the incredible phenomena of endless daylight. They had discovered the Lidenbrook Sea.
So here is something interesting that doesn't work quite properly, but this was a use of QuickTime VR. So QuickTime VR had only just about been launched at this point. I don't actually remember exactly what day it was, what date it was when it launched, but it was a form of QuickTime that basically had a 3D element to it. So this scene that you're looking at was actually rendered in Bryce 4, as I mentioned earlier, and you could actually save a scene from Bryce in QuickTime VR format. So this gave the chance to actually look around, and it kind of sort of works, but as you can see there's a problem that there was a black piece in the middle and that join isn't now working, and I'm not going to bother to try and fix it. But again, remember this was from the year 1999-2000, pretty advanced for the time, or at least so we thought. And the transitions you're seeing going from scene to scene, before someone adds a comment to the YouTube video about the awful transitions, yeah, transitions was just what we did back in those days, so no apologies now. It was of its era. Now we've finished looking round, let's carry on.
Well done, you've made it to the Lidenbrook Sea. And now all you've got to do is jump on the pieces of driftwood, but in the right order, in order to get to the beach.
Watch for it carefully. So Rick was there sitting with his trousers rolled up and shaking his feet up, which a little crab that was on his toe disappeared into the distance. All of these little clips of Rick you're seeing were recorded in my house near Blackwater, near Camberley, and we wanted him to wear something contrasty, a red t-shirt, and he didn't have a red t-shirt, so we had to go out and buy a red t-shirt, I remember. And that little, I don't know if it's a crab or an octopus, but anyway, that little sea creature was a soft toy that my daughter Stephanie had, that we filmed and took a photo of and used for that animation. And it makes another little appearance later on. But for now, we have to get across these logs to get to the shore, I believe. So let's carefully jump from log to log. And look, we're rewarded with another album cover.
A natural tide, governed by the unseen moon, carried them to a shore within a small cove. Huge pieces of driftwood lay scattered all around, whilst beneath their feet the bones of antediluvian sea reptiles formed a fossil beach. Gazing out to sea, they witnessed translucent fish from a far-gone age leap high above the waves for but a brief second of time before caressing the surface and disappearing beneath the gentle swell of the ocean. Above this playful exhibition, to their stunned amazement, a huge creature, a pterodactyl, flew in ever-decreasing circles, preparing to home in on its prey. Behind them, from a crevice high in the cliff face, the largest prehistoric winged lizard from the Jurassic period prepared for flight, the Quetzalcoatlus. With a huge wingspan measuring twice that of its enormous angular body, it took off towards its predetermined battle zone. Sensing danger, the pterodactyl turned in midair to flee, but the speed and ferocity of the attack had caught the creature completely unawares. Its role as the hunter had now become that of the hunted. As the Quetzalcoatlus inflicted wound after wound upon its hapless victim, large droplets of blood rained into the sea below, forming dark crimson circular pools, before being hastily dispersed by the waves, eager to destroy all evidence. As the pterodactyl lost its fight for life, it fell to the mercy of the ocean, where, just minutes earlier, the fish it had hunted for food now reversed the roles in nature's play. As the Quetzalcoatlus returned to its refuge in the cliff face, the Lidenbrook Sea gave no clue as to the drama they had just witnessed.
this error you can see on screen here, this was meant to take you back to the QuickTime VR, which would automatically spin around, and for some reason it doesn't seem to want to load the second time, even though it was there originally. So again, apologies for that. It wasn't worth going in and trying to fix it, but all you were missing were another look at the QuickTime VR there. Let's move on.
In order to connect with the original documented route, the three travelers were aware that they had to cross the Lidenbrook Sea. Having made a raft, as their predecessors had done before them, they set sail in a southerly direction. As the air grew heavy, the surface of the water became a window of evolution through which angular scaled fish covered with bright enamel could be seen dwelling amongst Pterodactyls and Dipterides, the latter being a two-finned fish until then presumed extinct. With the shore no longer in view, they lay motionless afloat the Lidenbrook Sea, with all around them seemingly locked in timeless history. They could only wonder as to what destiny would befall them. As one, they closed their eyes and prayed.
Still Waters Run Deep is a calm song, a reflective song. When you look back over all the things that have happened over your life, but in a calm and reflective, gentle, quiet manner. But you do wake up at the end.
No prizes for guessing who that was. A little journal entry to read, and we're now up to 6 album covers. That was, of course, Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues. Little mini biography of him. Let's move on.
The ebbing tide eventually carried them onto a small island strewn with giant turtle shells, on the far side of which a narrow strait of water flowed. This, the final gulf between them and the subterranean mainland.
How are you doing? Not far to go now. Come and explore the island. It's got a lot to reveal.
So, there's a right and a wrong way to play this. I'm going to play it the wrong way, so you get to see what happens. Woo! There was the little octopus or crab again. Let's try it again.
You've never played any games before, have you?
Yes.
The island appeared alive as geysers of hot steam forced their way through crevices in the siliceous sandstone, creating hot springs wherever the ground had sunk to form natural basins. They watched in fascination as plumes of vapor rose majestically into the air, creating heavily laden clouds from which each returning droplet assumed the prismatic colors of the rainbow. As the warm, humid air gently eased the pain of their aching limbs, the three weary travelers fell exhausted to the ground, where they slept. As they slept, they dreamed of the world they were now part of, a world within a world, time within time, a dream within dreams. They were were awakened by the noise of an electric storm. The waves had destroyed their raft, and the sea was a raging torrent, racing at great speed along the strait, which now took on the appearance of rapids. Each taking refuge inside one of the giant turtle shells, their chances of survival lessened by each passing second as huge waves swept them along the narrow strait toward an enormous gaping black hole into which the anguished water poured at an alarming rate. All around them, forked streaks of lightning plunged and attacked in every direction, some of which metamorphosed into globes of fire, which, for inexplicable reasons beyond their understanding, began to chase the turtle shells as they plunged violently, one by one, into the black hole. After falling for what seemed an eternity, they were suddenly shot sideways at terrific velocity into a tunnel which had barely enough room to spare between the shell and the ceiling above their heads. Although they were many leagues beneath the Earth's crust, the tunnel behind them was bathed in white, blinding light as, despite their being given both guidance and propulsion of great speed by the rapid flow of water, the globes of fire had chosen the same route. The chase was on, as they prepared for the ride of their lives.
Ride of your life. Of course, I wrote the song about this roller coaster ride through all of the winding tunnels under the center of the Earth. Ride of your life. Some people have said even sexual connotations. No idea what you mean.
Come aboard for the ride of your life. No substitution for getting a ride. Hold on tight for the ride of your life. Stop now.
And let's quickly open up the biography of Katrina Leskanich, or Katrina and the Waves, as she was, the group she was part of, singing Ride of Your Life, and with Rick's tongue-in-cheek introduction there. And we're now up to, yes, 7 competition pieces. Looks like just 1 to go. Another journal entry. And just to pull up the map again for a second, I've not really sort of pointed this out, but as you can see, as you move around the map, you can actually travel back to other parts of the game. So if you think you might have missed a competition piece, you could use the map to go back and play another part, play a part of the game again. You had to then keep going back through to where you were when you moved, but at least it was a way of picking up a competition piece if you wanted to do so. We're not going to do that, obviously, but I thought I'd just point that out. Let's just move on. There it is, the last competition piece.
As the tunnel finally reached its end, they found themselves safe in the giant turtle shells floating at the bottom of an enormous shaft. But realization told them that their frightening experience was not yet over. Probing the air from out of the aperture that had so unceremoniously expelled them at the end of their terrifying ride, a powerful beam of light searched the cavern around them. As the light intensified, they realized that their pursuers were also nearing the end of their journey. With trepidation, they awaited the arrival of the globes of fire. A series of thunderous reports, the globes of fire flew into the cavernous shaft as if fired from a giant cannon. Hovering above their intended victims, they executed rapid gyratory movements while shooting off narrow laser-like beams in ever-changing directions. Finally, as the light grew to unbelievable intensity, the globes of fire exploded, turning into cascades of living flame and flooding the shaft with thousands of minuscule luminous particles before leaving their terrified human prey in semi-darkness, lit only from a pinpoint of light which originated many leagues directly above them.
Getting near the end now.
They were rising, not at a great speed, but their upward motion was irrefutable. The hot, bubbling water that surrounded them gradually began to inspissate, ultimately becoming a thick, boiling lava paste. A heat haze created from the hot vapors hung menacingly above the angry molten surface. Unlike the dormant crater of Sneffels, where they had begun their journey, the volcanic shaft they were now in was active. The intense heat, eased only by the now incredible rapidity of ascent, was almost unbearable. A sepulchral light penetrated the vertical gallery as tongues of fire danced all about them. The absence of burning lava confirmed that they were not in the main shaft of the volcano, but in a parallel accessory conduit. Their continual rate of ascent grew at an alarming pace as they fought their way through burning clouds of volcanic cinders toward the opening of light above, itself racing downward at equal velocity to meet them. Upon reaching the yawning mouth of the auxiliary shaft, their speed decreased rapidly, and they found themselves gently floating away from one of the myriad of Earth's pores that littered the mountainside. Numerous additional streams of lava ran all around them like fiery serpents seeking out their prey. In relative safety, they watched the main eruption fire vast amounts of molten lava high into the air. 3,000 miles from their original starting point amidst the eastern archipelago of mythological memory, they gazed in wonder, as had the journeyers of 200 years before them, upon the blue mountains of Calabria, and the mountain that had expelled them, Mount Etna. So ended the return to the center of the Earth.
I hope you enjoyed your journey with me, and well done, you collected all of the pieces. So now if you fill the next form in, you'll be entered in the competition. Good luck. Return to the centre of the Earth is undoubtedly the most important thing I've ever done and the most enjoyable. I hope you've enjoyed the trip to this site. And if you haven't got the CD, why not?
So there we are, and it tries to send you to a form that doesn't exist anymore, so that's why you get that little error message there. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that little journey packed in time to return to the centre of the Earth. It was great fun to produce at the time. Took quite a number of weeks to put together, in fact over a month or so. Put together by basically three of us, myself, Kevin Dobson, as I already mentioned, who did the Bryce work for the scenery, and my wife now, Joanna Richardson, was who did all the graphics that you saw, the map and the hieroglyphics, the text and everything. So very much a team effort. So hope you enjoyed it. No need to add sarcastic comments on YouTube. You know, remember it was of its time, 1999, 2000 to remember. And I just thought it'd be fun to look back on it now, 20 years later, and see what it looked like. There we go. And of course, Rick's latest project now is another science fiction piece, The Red Planet. So hope you're going to go out and buy that and enjoy that. But for now, thanks for listening, and see you on our WCC.com soon. Bye-bye now.